Okay, welcome. Shabbat Shalom. I appreciate you all being here so much. Let us begin with some prayer. Um, Yehovah, thank you for bringing us together. We know that you gather with us here every week, and we just glorify your presence. We just glorify your word. Help us to make ourselves smaller and you larger every single time, Father. Father, I just want to pray over the divisions in the body right now. I want to pray that people are not dividing on unhealed wounds, not dividing on their own pride, but dividing truth from lies. And that's the only place that they're dividing on. But they are able to reconcile with each other and to look at the scriptures and remove the leaven. There is so much dividing going on, Father, right now. And I know it is you removing the leaven. And we understand that you're just going to keep removing the leaven all the way up till Passover. And we just embrace that, Father. We just embrace the challenges within the body. And we just thank you, Father, for bringing us together to study your word and sift through your word together so that we too can find the leaven in our lives. I just pray, Father, over these people. I pray for healing. I rebuke spirits of depression. I rebuke spirits of anxiety, Father. I just pray that your joy replaces your joy and your peace, your shalom, your perfect peace. We just take authority over all chaos in these people's lives, and we just rebuke it out now, Father. And I just pray, Father, that you instill a sense of perfect peace in each one of your people here, each one of your people who is gathered here. Put your perfect peace in them and put your joy in them this week, that they may have joy and just fellowship with you this week to come, Father, that they will draw near to you as they start to remove the leaven in their houses. I just pray that they will draw near to you and you feel your presence always in all things, not just here when we come together on the Sabbath, but feel your presence throughout the week. I just pray, Father, for anyone who feels disconnected to you. Pray, Father, that you'll open the door of wisdom for them so that they may understand where that disconnection is coming from, and that you will restore that connection to them. If they need to be obedient in some area of your life, of their life, I pray, Father, that you will reveal it to them clearly. And I pray, Father, that you will bring each person on this broadcast today and in future broadcasts. I pray that you will bring them the people that they need to have in their life. And I pray that you close the doors that are not supposed to be open, and you open the doors that you want to open for their path, for their walk. Lead them to green pastures. In Yeshua's mighty name. Heavenly Father, I just want to pray for healing over the people, healing in the bodies. I want to pray over diabetes. I want to pray against the spirit of diabetes and anything that is causing diabetes to stir up in these people. I want to rebuke that out of them now, Father. Any infirmities that have come upon these people for disobedience, for lack of faith, for anything, or even just to show your glory, Father, I just pray that you heal these people now. I pray that you protect them from the diseases of the season, of the winter season. Protect them from any manufactured diseases of the enemy. Protect them from all of the plagues. The plagues of Egypt do not come upon your people, and we just rebuke the plagues of Egypt off of us now in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen. All right, we're in Bo. Bo is it means come in Hebrew. It's the first words of the verse of the first reading, which say, "Then Yehovah said to Moses, 'Come, Bo, to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart.'" The portion begins by concluding the narrative of the 10 plagues, the 10th of which is the slaying of the firstborn. To avoid the plague, the Israelites were given instructions for the Passover sacrifice and the laws of the feast of the unleavened bread. Pharaoh finally consents to let Israel go, and they leave Egypt. So this is going to be the beginning of our Passover journey. I personally have started to clean out my house. I have a student coming to live with us in a couple weeks from Brazil. So I'm doing a house clean regardless, because we have to make space for her. But yeah, it's great to just start doing your leaven cleaning now. And I look at it like a physical leaven cleaning. And as I do the physical cleaning, I reflect on the spiritual matters, right? So as we clean out our closets and clean out the chametz that's in the corners, we reflect on the leaven that's in our lives, which I will get into. We'll get into that during the portion. And so over the next few weeks, we will be going through all of the things that you need to know for Passover. We're going to be sifting through every single thing that you're going to need to know for Passover. So it's a very beautiful time. I feel very strongly that Jehovah is removing the leaven from the church right now, the ecclesia. The Christian ecclesia, he's removing the leaven. He started doing that. He tried to do that in December, which he tries to do every year. But then now is almost like a second chance for repentance for activities in December and a wake-up call that you're in the wrong tent, right? You got to come into Jehovah's tent, not Nimrod's, right? And so as we come into the Passover season, I believe, because this is a season that the ears become ripe, the barley ears of corn become, the barley ears of harvest become ripe, right? That's why we call it the month of Abib. And as we come into this Passover this year, you're going to see Christians repenting, and you're going to see Christians being circumcised of the heart fully, finally, and coming into the covenant fully, finally. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. And I just pray, like, we all have so much to learn, and we all have so much growth to do, and just pray for your Christian brothers and sisters, because we all here know the depth and the beauty of Yah's word and the intricacy of Yah's word. And we want them to experience that too, right? We don't want to be, Yeshua said to the Pharisees, you close off the door to the kingdom. You close off the door to heaven to others. And it's almost this thing of like, I'm so smart. I know I have my perfect calendar. I have my perfect whatever. And in that behavior, that prideful behavior, the door to the kingdom gets closed off to others because, and I'm guilty of this. Anything that I ever speak about, it's a lesson that I've learned through experience, through being guilty of. And when we share the word, when we break the bread, we are opening the door to the kingdom. We're giving them the crumbs to the kingdom so that they could come in and have a full meal, right? A lot of the church, what the church does is, here's a little bit, here a little, there a little. We went through this last week. Here a little, there a little. And it leaves people hungry. Here a little, there a little leaves people hungry. But when you have the full meal of the scriptures, you sit down and you walk through the scriptures and you invite people in to really embrace the fullness of the scriptures. They get a full meal for the first time. They don't walk out of the door still hungry. They're able to feed themselves, right? What is that saying? You teach a man you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime, because he knows how to interact with the water and the fish, right? And so when we look at the bread, like if you teach people how to go through the word, understand the word, and go through it, not just plucking verses, which people love to do, pluck verse out of context, then you teach them how to feed others, right? And feed themselves with the word. Okay, let's get into it. We are at Exodus 10. Exodus 10, verse 13.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine among them, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and of your grandson how I have dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and what signs I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." So Moses and Aaron went in to Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your country, and they shall cover the face of the land, so that no one can see the land. And they shall eat what is left to you after the hail, and they shall eat every tree of yours that grows in the field. And they shall fill your houses and the houses of all your servants and of all the Egyptians, as neither your fathers nor your grandfathers have seen, from the day they came on earth to this day." Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the man go, that they may serve the Lord their God." Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined? So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, Go, serve the Lord your God. But which ones are to go? Moses said, We will go with our young and our old. We will go with our sons and daughters, and with our flocks and herds, for we must hold a feast to the Lord. But he said to them, The Lord be with you if ever I let you and your little ones go. Look, you have some evil purpose in mind. No, go, the men among you, and serve the Lord, for that is what you are asking. And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. Then the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land, all that the hail has left. So Moses stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind had brought the locusts. The locusts came up over all the land of Egypt and settled on the whole country of Egypt, such a dense swarm of locusts as had never been before, nor ever will be again. They covered the face of the whole land, so that the land was darkened, and they ate all the plants in the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field, through all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh hastily called Moses and Aaron and said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive my sin, please, only this once, and plead with the Lord your God only to remove this death from me. So he went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with the Lord. And the Lord turned the wind into a very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. Not a single locust was left in all the country of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go. Then the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness to be felt. So Moses stretched out his hand toward heaven, and there was pitch darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light where they lived. Then Pharaoh called Moses and said, Go, serve the Lord. Your little ones also may go with you. Only let your flocks and your herds remain behind. But Moses said, You must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also must go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind, for we must take of them to serve the Lord our God, and we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. Then Pharaoh said to him, Get away from me, take care never to see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die. Moses said, As you say, I will not see your face again.
So interesting, all the little details. I don't know if you've ever gone through this, but there seems to be some parallelism with the book of Revelation and the plagues that happen in the book of Revelation as well. The darkness is really interesting because we're told to have lamps ready, right? So when we're talking about the 9th plague and the darkness, there was a darkness on the land. The people couldn't see at all, but yet the Israelites had light, right? And we're told to be wise maidens and have our lamps ready and to have that light ready, right? And it's very literal, of course, but then it's also very metaphorical, right? Having your light ready in the darkness, so that when that darkness comes, you're not overwhelmed by it. You're not afraid of it. You're not worried about it because you understand the order of things. You understand how things are going to play out, right? All of the Torah is prophecy. And that's, I think a lot of people don't realize that. All of the Torah is prophecy of cycles repeating as well. So if you want to understand prophecy in the book of the prophets and all of those things, and you want to understand the prophecy in the book of Revelation, understanding the Torah is the basis of understanding that, because these cycles and these shadow pictures are repeated. There is this whole Catholic doctrine about the 3 days of darkness, and it's kind of like the Catholics have taken the 3 days of darkness and ran with it and created this doctrine of you have to have these special lamps with this special oil, missing the point entirely. The point is to have Jehovah's oil, right? His spirit flowing through you, the light in your temple, right? And so with this Catholic doctrine, they talk a lot about you have to buy the special oil. Now, when we look at the maidens with the lamps that don't have oil, they're not prepared. They're told to go buy and sell. Okay, so let's look at this because it's actually quite interesting. Parable of the maidens. So the foolish maidens are told to go buy oil. And I honestly, like, to me, when I read this, and this is just my take on it, it sounds very sarcastic. And maybe that's just my Canadian sarcasm. But Matthew 25, 1 to 13. Matthew 25, and the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went up to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, 5 of them were wise. And the foolish took their lamps. They took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamp. And the bridegroom was delayed, and they became drowsy and slept. And at midnight there was a cry, "Here is the bridegroom, come and meet him." And all the maidens arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps have gone out." This always reminds me of the people who are not pressing into the word, and they're not really seeking him and knowing his word, and they haven't pressed that oil, right? Oil comes from olives. It's got to be, you got to press the olives to get the clear oil, and pressing the olives comes from the olive tree, right? And we are grafted in, and so all of these pictures are a picture of us being grafted in, being pressed, all of these things. Now, if you're not pressing oil continually, the end and these dramatic times are going to come, these tribulations are going to come, and you're going to look at it and you're going to be fearful. You're not going to understand, right? And if you have a very lukewarm faith that doesn't have that oil pressed, where you really know the scriptures, you're going to be going to other people like, what's going on? What's happening? What's going on? You know, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Because you haven't pressed your own oil, right? So you're not able to stand in peace, a light in the darkness, a lampstand in the darkness, because you don't know the scriptures. You don't know what they say. You haven't spent that time, right? So you got to press the oil now and prepare now. And that's why, you know, it's such a beautiful thing, the provisions he gives us to do that. He gives us his feasts. The feasts press the oil for you as you walk through his feasts. There, you learn the scriptures, you learn the prophecies. He gives us the Sabbath so that we can press oil on the Sabbath. And, you know, it sounds like work, but it's more that we are seeking to know him, seeking to enter into his word and get that oil out of the word, right? So that we know it when the time comes. We're not confused, right? We're not scared by the darkness. We know it. We have oil in our lamps, right? So the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps have gone out." But the wise answered, saying, "Since there will be not enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourself." To me, this is such a picture of, you know, when you have, sometimes I'll have a video go viral and it'll be something mildly controversial to the mainstream narrative, and people will tag these different content creators to fix what I'm saying, right? Or like rebuke or rebuttal. And instead of looking up the verses and looking up the word and taking it to prayer and taking it to the scriptures, there's this process of looking for somebody to tell you it's okay, looking for a dealer to deal with you some ear-tickling information so that you don't have to actually deal with the scriptures yourself, right? And so that is what that picture is to me. And then, so we're thinking about this whole Catholic 3 days of darkness doctrine that they do. It's a real, you can look it up. It's a real doctrine that they do. You have to buy the special oil from them. You have to buy the special candles and special wicks, because when this 3 days of darkness comes, you need to buy that oil, and you have to have that special oil that you bought from the Catholic Church. Look it up. It's for real. And so this is just like, the obviousness of it to me is just mind blowing. Like when you know the scriptures and you look and you can see the patterns, it's like, yeah, you're telling them to go buy it instead of just pressing oil for themselves, right? And when they're going to buy, so when they're going to buy this oil, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterwards, the other maidens came also said, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch where, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. That is the same verse. That is the same speak that he's saying when he closes the door. Obviously, it's a parallel to when he closes the door and says, you workers of iniquity, right? You workers of lawlessness. You're not pressing oil, you're working lawlessness, right? That's why he doesn't know them. And knowing is an intimacy, right? He doesn't have that intimacy with them because they haven't looked to know who he is and press the oil and press that relationship to know who he is. They've gone to the dealers and bought the relationship, if that makes sense. Back to the Torah portion. I want to just point out Pharaoh prophesying. Pharaoh prophesied. He spoke out words, and he basically cursed himself. Then Pharaoh said, this is verse 27, 10:27. But Jehovah hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let him go. Then Pharaoh said to him, Moshe, get away from me, take care never to see my face again, for on that day you see my face, you shall die. And Moshe said, as you say, I will not see your face again. And then that's when the final plague. And it's interesting because it's almost like Pharaoh is speaking death over the land too. It's like, you shall die. He's speaking this death out. So let's go to verse 11 or chapter 11, Exodus 11. We're into the final plague, which is the plague of the firstborn.
The Lord said to Moses, yet one plague more I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward, he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will drive you away completely. Speak now in the hearing of the people, that they ask every man of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor for silver and gold jewelry. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. So Moses said, thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out in the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle. There shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there has never been, nor ever will be again. But not a dog shall growl against any of the people of Israel, either man or beast, that you may know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. And all these your servants shall come down to me, and bow down to me, saying, get out, you and all the people who follow you. And after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the people of Israel go out of his land.
I just wanted to point out that the people took the silver and gold, and so the silver and gold, the blessing the provisions that Jehovah had given them. We see that silver and gold, that jewelry come up later in Exodus. Okay, so I wanted to just point it out now. They're taking it now, and then we're going to notice this jewelry later. It's going to reappear, right? And so the other thing that is really, really interesting is that the dogs didn't even bark at the people. So as the people are leaving, not even the dogs were barking. You know, when you walk by somebody's house and their dog is in the window barking. So not even the dogs would bark at them. And you know, you can almost feel what that would feel like, that holy presence as the people are walking out of the land, of just like, we're going, you know. And he will drive you away completely. They'll let you go from here. I'm going to drive you away from the things of Egypt completely. Okay. Um, and so when they went, it was just like this really, you can just picture the spirit that must have been in the air for that. Right. So now we're going to move on to the Passover. This is chapter 12. So this is where we get into the Passover.
The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month every man shall take a lamb according to their fathers' houses, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons. According to what each can eat, you shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted, its head with its legs and its inner parts. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be for you a memorial day. You shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations, as a statute forever. You shall keep it as a feast. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven out of your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. On the first day you shall hold a holy assembly, and on the 7th day a holy assembly. No work shall be done on those days, but what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared by you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your hosts out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generations as a statute forever. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is a sojourner or a native of the land. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your dwelling places you shall eat unleavened bread.
Okay, there's a lot of information in there that I think we should just cover the basics of. So on that Passover, they did slaughter a lamb. Now, why is that important? Well, the Egyptians worshipped sheep. So can you imagine these Egyptians who worship sheep seeing these Israelites, these Hebrews, marking their doors with the blood of sheep? right? The blood of lamb. That would be a very powerful picture to them. What's really important to understand about this, I know there's like certain Messianic Hebrew congregations that do this whole lamb slaughter process. I would stay far, far away from any of that. Is it okay to have a piece of lamb with your Passover dinner? Yes. Slaughtering a lamb and putting the blood on your door and stuff like that, no bueno, you guys, don't do that stuff. I could tell you stories about people who had started to do that kind of thing. First of all, the lamb that we are looking upon is Yeshua, right? It says right here in the verse, this day shall be a memorial day for you. Okay, so it's not, we're not doing the blood and we're not doing that stuff in order to be saved. You don't do that, okay? This day shall be a memorial day for you. You shall keep it as a feast to Jehovah throughout your generations, as a statute forever. You shall keep it as a feast. It's a memorial day. It's a shadow picture, okay? It's not that you need to slaughter a lamb and place blood on your door in order to be saved. That's ridiculous, right? We look now upon the cross and we put the blood of the lamb of Yeshua on the doors of our heart, the lintels of our heart, right? And that's how we're saved, okay? So be very careful. I would say I would just have like a very strong warning against any congregation that's doing any of that type of stuff. Just exit immediately. I had to pray deliverance with a girl a couple years ago. Her family had started to slaughter animals on their farm in this fashion. They built an altar and they started to do this stuff, and they started to touch the blood, and like scary, scary stuff to start doing that, right? That's like witchcraft level stuff, right? They started to touch the blood, build altars, and do all that stuff. The man in the household that had kind of started doing that, he ended up kind of losing it mentally. Their whole household ended up kind of losing it mentally. And the man who had started doing these slaughterings, they had slaughtered like many lambs on their property and they were offering them up and all of this stuff. He ended up actually stabbing his dad later on. Okay. And why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because don't play, like just don't play. The spiritual realm is real. And if you don't understand the nuance of scripture, like really, and you know, it just don't play, don't touch that stuff. That's really scary to be messing with. And anyway, so I prayed deliverance with her. And what we did is, because they had all repented of the activity except for this one man. And so what we did is her and the dad that was stabbed, he didn't die. They prayed around the property and they anointed the property and they just repented from all of that activity. And what happened is the man actually ended up moving off the property. So it did sort itself out with repentance and prayer, but I don't know how that man is doing now. But it's very scary. Don't touch that stuff. Like really don't touch it. This day is a memorial. It's a shadow picture. It's to teach you about Yeshua, right? 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. So unleavened bread is just bread without leaven. So it's a symbolic picture. And as we talk about leaven, we have to understand there's the literal leaven that you would remove. And it's good to do this for your health. Obviously, when you don't have yeast in your body for 7 days, that's a very healthy thing. So you want to look just for places that leaven is hidden, literally and metaphorically. So literally, beer, bread, crackers, panko breading. There's all sorts of places. You just want to check your products and remove the leaven from your house. I usually throw out old bread and stuff. So if I've had bread in my freezer or I've had bread in my pantry, it's just a time to just get rid of it. If you have crackers and stuff, just old, like open stuff, just get rid of it. It's a great time to just clear it out. But if you have stuff that's not open and what I do, if I have like a box of baking soda or yeast, I just put it outside for the week. I'll put it outside the house. And that's just a spiritual metaphorical reminder. It's not, don't be overly legalistic about it, because the reality is there's yeast in the air that we breathe. So it's not that you're going to be free of all yeast, and that's the point. It's more the spiritual understanding is that you are looking for leaven. You're looking for the things that puff up, right? And you're removing it from the house. Let's go through the words for leaven. There's two main words that are used to describe leaven. There's chametz, to leaven, and it's flour dough rising. It's the fermentation, and it's also it means to sour and degrade. So back in that day, they would have sourdough starters, right? And I don't know if you know, but the process of sourdough starting is a very long and tedious process. It's almost like an art form. There's people that, you know, they pass down their sourdough generation to generation. And that is such a profound picture when you think about it with the idea of the scriptures. You know, you have these people that take this tradition of the sourdough and they pass it down, pass it down. We see that in our understanding of the scriptures, these traditions, and all of this chametz comes in, and people start to, it's what it does is it sours and degrades the word, right? If you have all of these traditions and all of this extra stuff that you're bringing into the word, oh, well, my pastor said this, or this rabbi said that, and we do this because of this and that, and it's like all this extra fluff, right? It degrades the meaning of the word. It degrades the revelation of the word. Like, do we want the chametz from this rabbi, from this pastor, from Jenny on TikTok? Do we want that, or do we want what the pure word says, right? So we want to look for that stuff and remove it. And then we want to look at the sior. I'm not sure. Sior? I think it's sior. I think that's how you say it. And that it has the meaning to be left over, to remain. So if we look at, and they're both translated into leaven, So let's look at, I just want to look at sior. Sior. Yeast cake. So it's like the leftover yeast cake. Swelling, as in swelling by fermentation. It's translated to leaven. And then chametz is the added yeast. Okay, so the sior, I believe, obviously I'm not a native Hebrew speaker, the sior is the bread with the yeast in it, the puffed up piece of bread, right? And just think of this like it is a very deep metaphorical thing. And then the chametz is the leavening agent. Okay, so when we're getting rid of the chametz in our life, we want to get rid of, you know, all of the things that we're adding in to leaven. And then we want to get rid of the sior, which is the puffed up piece of bread, the puffed up doctrine. Okay, so we want to remove the puffed up piece of doctrine as well. One thing that is, people always look at leaven and they really focus on the Pharisees, but they miss what is said in Mark. And this is wild, you guys. This is wild. This is something that I found this morning, randomly, just getting ready for the study. Just wild how this works. Okay. Mark 8:15. And Yeshua cautioned them, saying, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Check, we got that. And the leaven of Herod. You guys, I don't even know, like, literally this morning, I'm just going through this stuff and I'm looking up about Herod. Now we know Herod is a Roman, right? So what is the leaven of Herod? It's the things of Rome, the fluff of Rome, the leaven of Rome that people are adding to the scriptures. Okay. I could not make this up if I tried. Let me show you guys something. I was looking up Herod on the interwebs, and I was like, oh, Herod has a coin. Okay, so this is Herod of Antipas. Where is he? Herod of Antipas, the Herod of Yeshua's time. Okay, the coinage of Herod Antipas is rather rare. It can be divided into 4 categories, and it's just talking about the coins. Okay, and I'm looking at the coin of the Herod of Antipas. Okay, so this is the Herod of Yeshua's time. Okay, I was like, oh, is that a menorah? Is that a menorah? No, and I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's not a menorah. 6, right? Oh, that's a freaking tree of Lebanon. It's a, what does that look like to you guys? It's like, nah, that couldn't be it, right? And then I was like, okay, what's on the other side? It's a freaking wreath, you guys. It's a freaking tree and wreath. I can't make this up. It's a freaking tree and a freaking wreath. Part of my wreath on the reverse. So what is the leaven of Herod, you guys? Do you see it? Do you see it? Okay. You know what? I'm sorry to get so hyped up, but every week I said, I'm not going to talk about this Xmas stuff. I'm not going to talk about it. The people who get it, get it. The people who don't. That's up to Yada. And then he like hands me this. And he's just like, here, talk about it again. I guess I'll talk about it again. Okay. Anyways, now you know. The coin of Herod Antipas, the leaven of Herod, has a freaking tree on it and a freaking wreath on it. Do we need to be more obvious about where the leaven of Herod could possibly be found? I don't know. Anyways, part of my passion. We'll just carry on. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no. Now I'm gonna have to talk about this again. No. I said I wasn't gonna talk about this again. Here we are. Okay, so remove the leaven. Remove the leaven. Anything that is not there to glorify Yah, specifically to glorify Yah, that is giving you revelation about who he is. What is idolatry? Idolatry is worshiping a carved image, an image that he didn't reveal to you. It's a carved image, carved from Rome, carved from the Pharisees, carved from the rabbis, a carved out image, right? So if you're worshiping an understanding or a doctrine, the puffed up doctrine with full of pride, that is not found in scripture, that he's not revealing through scripture about who he is, about his revelation of who he is, then that's leaven, right? That's got to go. Let's go through the leaven verses really quick. I don't think I'll read them all. There's not that many. So we just did, there should be no leaven found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he's a sojourner or a native in the land. Okay, so is it just for the native born Israelites? No, it's for the sojourners, those who are grafted in, those who are joining themselves to the ecclesia, the kingdom of Israel, right? It's for everyone, okay? Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days, and no leaven shall be seen with you. No leaven shall be seen within all your territory. Within all your territory. No grain offering that you should bring. This is Leviticus. Okay, so hopping forward to Leviticus, I'm just going to go through them all. No grain offering that you bring to Jehovah shall be made with leaven. You shall burn no leaven, nor any honey or any food or any honey as a food offering to Jehovah. So when you are bringing your spiritual sacrifices and your spiritual offerings, and you are puffing them up with leaven, with Christmas trees and wreaths, the leaven of Herod, or with the leaven of the Pharisees, the extra doctrines, and you're bringing that forward to him, you're making a grain offering, you're making a spiritual offering with the leaven. There's a very metaphorical picture there, right? Leviticus 6:17, it shall not be baked with leaven. I have given it as their portion of my food offerings. It is a thing most holy, like a sin offering and the guilt offering. Leviticus 23:17, you shall bring from your dwelling places 2 loaves of bread to be weighed, made with 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be with fine flour, and they shall be baked with leaven as a first fruits to Jehovah. That is, okay, so we'll get into that when we get into Shavuot. So what is the difference? Okay, so when Yeshua says the kingdom of God is like a little bit of leaven that a woman hid in 3 measures of flour, and then it leavens up. Okay, that is the picture of Shavuot. Okay, so we come into Passover, we remove the leaven of the Pharisees of Herod. Okay, then after Passover, we count the Omer to Shavuot. And Shavuot is when the leaven of the kingdom of heaven gets put in. That's the Holy Spirit growing and puffing up the kingdom, right? And so that the kingdom grows and expands, okay? So that is the 2 different things. So we're in the Passover season. So we're in the season of removing the leaven, okay? And then what is the picture of the 2 giant loaves of bread for Shavuot? That is a picture of 2 loaves, right? Old Testament, New Testament, right? 2 loaves, 2 tablets. Love Jehovah with all your heart and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. The 2 tablets, 2 loaves. The first time that they come to Mount Sinai and they accept the covenant, that's when they receive the 10 commandments. And then eventually, because of the sin of the golden calf, they received the 10 commandments, and they received the other commandments on top of that because they weren't getting it, right? They needed more structure. So they received the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai. What happens on the day of Pentecost? They receive the Holy Spirit, which is supposed to put the 10 commandments on our heart, right? That's when they're supposed to receive the Holy Spirit at Shavuot, the day of Pentecost, same day, happened on the same day, and they receive the commandments on their heart, okay? The Holy Spirit starts to teach them and refine them, okay? So don't get confused about why there's leaven with the Shavuot offerings, but there isn't leaven with the Passover offerings. It's the different process, removing the leaven of Egypt, all the nonsense, and the leaven of Herod and the leaven of the Pharisees, and then adding in the proper leaven of the Holy Spirit, the commandments of Jehovah. So talked about that one. Talked about Mark. I think I got them all now. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 5:6. Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Cleanse out the old leaven, that you may have a new lump, that you are already unleavened. For Yeshua, Messiah, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Let us therefore celebrate the festival of Passover, not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Okay, so yes, the Christians were celebrating Passover during Paul's time. Galatians 5:9, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Okay, so you can see how a lot of times in the New Testament they're talking about the old images and the old ideas, right? So it's so you're understanding the cycle of it, right? The metaphors of it. Let's get back to the Torah portion. I think I covered all of the, just with the timing of things. So you have the first of Abib, which would be the new moon, right? The month, first of Abib. And then on that day this year, we have an eclipse going across America. That's pretty huge, okay? You guys know about the eclipse, so I don't have to go through that. So then 10 days later is when they would choose the Passover lambs, okay? And then on that, so that's when they would choose the lamb, and then, right, let's just look through it and make sure we have it correct. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the until the 21st day of the month at evening. So you eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Okay. You clean out your house ahead of time. And then for 7 days after, you eat the unleavened bread. And that is a reminder. So that is, okay, Yeshua said to eat of the bread and do this in remembrance of me. Okay. Do this in remembrance of me. So as we're eating, we're having communion literally for the 7 days. Okay. We're removing the chametz from our house, the leaven, the things that are puffing us up. And then for 7 days, we are humbling ourselves, having communion for those 7 days. Okay. Very, very important. And this, if anyone eats what is leavened, the person shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is a sojourner or a native in the land. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your dwelling places, you shall eat unleavened bread. I think we covered that. Okay. If you need more help with the feast, I do have a book that I made, and it just really simple, break it down. And that's on my website. Okay. I don't think we can go through everything here today, but I just wanted to make sure we covered some of that. Okay, I think we're at verse 29. So we're going through the 10th plague now, the death of the firstborn.
Then Moses called all the elders of Israel and said to them, "Go and select lambs for yourselves according to your clans, and kill the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out of the door of his house until the morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. You shall observe this rite as a statute for you and for your sons forever. And when you come to the land that the Lord will give you, as he has promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, 'What do you mean by this service?' you shall say, 'It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses.' And the people bowed their heads and worshipped. Then the people of Israel went and did so, as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night and said, 'Up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also.' The Egyptians were urgent with the people to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, 'We shall all be dead.' So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls being bound up in their cloaks on their shoulders. The people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And the people of Israel journeyed from Rameses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The time that the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It was a night of watching by the Lord to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So this same night is a night of watching kept to the Lord by all the people of Israel throughout their generations.
So there was a verse earlier on. It talks about when you eat the Passover, You eat it with your loins girded, your staff in your hand, and your sandals on your feet. So you're eating the Passover in expectation that you're going to be delivered out of Egypt, and that you are going to be leaving on a journey to leave Egypt. Okay, so you could take that literally or metaphorically, however you like. Loins girded is so they wear the tunics, right? The long tunics. And so to gird the loins, they would wrap the tunic up kind of like a shorts. So they would have shorts, and they would do this when they were preparing for battle. And they would do this if they were going to go on a long journey, so that their legs would be free to walk. So that's what girding your loins, and it's also a picture of just being ready to go, ready for battle, right? And sandals are on your feet, so you're eating the Passover with your shoes on. You're just ready to go at the door, ready to leave Egypt. Okay, it's that feeling of expectation of leaving all of that behind and being ready to completely leave it all behind. The other thing that I wanted to mention, mixed multitude. So there's this ongoing thing where the Christians want to separate themselves from Israel, and they want to be different and they want to be separate. But the picture that Yehovah paints is a mixed multitude joining in. And we see this in Isaiah 56 as well. So the people who left Egypt were not just the tribes of Israel. Okay, they're not just those descendant from Jacob. They were also the mixed multitude. You can imagine, and just as we'll see in these last days, as the plagues hit and these people see that, well, these Israelites are not getting hit, they're not afraid, they have light in the darkness. When they see that, they're going to be like, I want to graft into you guys. I'm grafting in. And then the other thing, there's a verse, I forgot the verse. I should memorize this verse. There's a verse about how in that day, 10, just looking it up really quick. Zechariah 8:23. Many peoples and strong nations will come to seek Yehovah of hosts in Jerusalem and plead for Yehovah's favor. Yehovah of hosts says, in those days, 10 men from the nations of every language will grab the robe of a Jewish man tightly, urging, let us go with you, for we have heard Yehovah is with you. So it's a picture of the nations grabbing a hold of Yeshua, being grafted in. They're grabbing a Jewish man, right? Grabbing a Jewish man. And so they're grabbing Yeshua, and they're understanding that he's the holy high priest of Jerusalem, right? So this is that same picture. We have the mixed multitude grabbing onto the people of Israel and leaving with them. And the mixed multitude is doing everything and they're told to do everything that Israel is doing. Okay, so there's not separate, you're not cut off from your people because you're not a native born Israelite. Okay. I think that is the only thing I wanted to mention. Okay, let's go into the institution of the Passover at verse 43. So Exodus 12:43.
And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner shall eat of it, but every slave that is bought for money may eat of it after you have circumcised him. No foreigner or hired worker may eat of it. It shall be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the flesh outside the house, and you shall not break any of its bones. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. If a stranger shall sojourn with you and would keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. Then he may come near and keep it. He shall be as a native of the land. But no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you. All the people of Israel did just as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their hosts.
Okay, so there's one law for the people of Israel, and anyone who sojourns amongst them. Okay. So if you are grafted into Israel, you're grafted in, you're grabbing the robe of that Jew, Yeshua, Jehovah is with them. You are going to do the same things. This is again proven in Isaiah 56 very clearly on the day of Jehovah. We talked about circumcision last week. I'm not going to get into that again. It's very a very spiritual understanding. It's a very spiritual understanding. And when the people are in the wilderness, we'll kind of see it played out as we walk through the wilderness verses and we have the Exodus. So we go through the Exodus and all the wilderness verses, you'll kind of see the evolution of it. But I'm not going to talk about it today because we talked about it last week. Okay, so let's go into the consecration of the firstborn, Exodus 13:1.
The Lord said to Moses.
Oh, wait, my bad. There is something I wanted to point out. It shall be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the flesh outside the house, and you shall not break any of its bones. Okay, so remember that for our reading later on. Okay, so the Passover lamb, no bones broken. Okay, very important that no bones were broken. The other thing I wanted to say for me personally in my Passover walk, if I have a Passover dinner at my house, I don't invite people who are not circumcised unto Jehovah. And I mean that in a spiritual sense, obviously. If they don't have a heart, like this Passover moment is the moment, and this happens every single year. You're going to see people, their hearts are going to get circumcised from between now and Passover. You're going to see people's hearts get circumcised and the Torah getting written on their heart, and they're going to start keeping Sabbath, and they're going to start wanting to learn his feasts instead of the world's feasts, instead of Herod's feasts. And so for me, I don't invite people to my Passover. If I'm having a Passover dinner, I don't invite people who are not submitted to Jehovah. That's just because it's such a deep spiritual thing. But if they're on the walk and they're like they're Christian and they're wanting to get to know and they're wanting to understand, then I will. Okay. It's just pray about it. Pray about who you share it with and who you come, because people have to go through that process of repentance and removing the leaven. And so the reason I say this is because let's go into 1 Corinthians and I'll show you why I say this. Because Passover is eating that unleavened bread is the communion, right? And so when we eat the unleavened bread and we have that communion, we're accepting the sacrifice of the Passover. That's a holy thing. And you don't want to actually bring that revelation onto somebody who's not ready for it, right? Let me just look up 1 Corinthians 11, verse 23. And I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, at that Messiah Yeshua, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and we had given thanks. He broke it and he said, "This is my body. This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in that way, he also took the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. Do this, and as often as you drink it, in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim Yeshua's death until he comes. Whoever therefore eats of the bread and drinks of the cup of Jehovah in an unworthy manner will be guilty concerning the body and the blood of Jehovah. Let this person examine himself, and then so eat the bread and drink the cup. For if anyone who eats and drinks without discerning the body eats and drinks judgment upon himself. This is why many of you are weak and ill, and some have died. But if we judged ourselves truly, we would not be judged. But if we were judged by Jehovah, we are disciplined, so that we will not be condemned along with the world. Okay, so if you eat of the bread and drink of the cup, without removing the leaven and looking and repenting and doing all of that and checking yourself, right? You can eat and drink judgment upon yourself because you're entering the covenant, but you're not agreeing to the covenant terms, right? So you're accepting of the covenant, but you're going out and sinning still, or you're being rebellious still, or you're doing all this stuff still. And so when you do that, you actually bring judgment upon yourself. And that's why it's often said that it's better to not know, right? It's better to not tell people. You warn people and you tell them, but it's like the things that we don't understand and we don't fully get yet, there's grace for that. But as soon as somebody knows like something and then they're rebellious to it, they're openly rebellious to it, there's no the grace doesn't, there's no offering for that anymore, right? Just like it says in the book of Hebrews, if you're just openly rebellious, there's no offering for your sin anymore, right? Because you're being openly rebellious. You're just rebelling against the word of Yahovah. And that's why in Proverbs it says, those who reject his Torah, their prayers are an abomination, because you're praying and you're praying for healing and deliverance, but you're not checking where you need to be repenting, where you need to be getting your life in align with what Yahovah says, right? And so that's why I like, if I was to have somebody that, was maybe in my circle that I was going to invite to Passover, I would pray on it first and ask Yehovah what his will is. And I think it's okay to have people come and learn about Passover. It's a memorial and all of that. But if they're partaking of the communion part of it, right? Just like in the Christian church, you see this a lot, where you don't take communion in the Christian church or the Catholic church. You don't just randomly take it, right? You have a preparation process. And that comes from this idea, of course. It comes from this idea of like, you want to check yourself before you engage in Passover. That's why we have these like months that we clean the leaven out, right? Because it's a preparation process. You're cleaning out the leaven to make sure that you're ready and clean and repented, and you've checked yourself before the Passover, right? So that when you eat of the Passover, you're not eating and drinking judgment upon yourself. Let's go back to the Torah portion. I think we're at verse 13 now.
Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast, is mine. Then Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery, for by a strong hand the Lord brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Today, in the month of Abib, you are going out. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be to you as a sign on your hand, and as a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this statute at its appointed time from year to year.
Okay, so mark of the beast. What does it say in Revelation? There's a mark on the hand or on the forehead, right? So we have here a reference to the mark of Yehovah. And it shall be as this, okay, you shall keep that feast of unleavened bread. It is eaten for 7 days. No unleavened bread shall be seen with you. Then no leaven shall be seen in all your territory. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what Yehovah did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be for you as a sign on your hand and a memorial between your eyes, that the law of Yehovah may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand Yehovah has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this statute with this appointed time from year to year. yeah, I don't need to really explain that. I just wanted to reread it so that it would stick with you guys. Egypt in Hebrew means, let's look it up. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So let's just look it up. I think it means something, but let's just look. Okay. So Egypt, do you guys remember, you remember Noah had 3 sons, right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Egypt is the nations that were birthed from Ham, okay? Egyptian kingdom, empire as a people, a political power. See if I can find what I was looking for, though. Matsor is the root. It's the same as, yeah, okay, got it. Matsor is the root, and it's a sense of a limit. Okay, in a sense of a limit. Egypt as a border of Palestine, besieged places, sent defense, fortified. Okay, so Egypt is a picture of a fortified place of the descendants of Ham. Okay, remember that Ham is the one that sinned against Noah, right? Now, if we look at Matsor, it's a mound of besiegement, a siege, a distress, besieged, a bulwark, a defense, a fortress, a strong tower. And then the root is sore, which is to cramp, to confine, literally and figuratively formative or hostile. It's an adversary, an assault, a beset, a besiege, a bind up, cast, distress, fashion, fortify, enclose, lay siege, put up in bags. So all of these words are built into that word for Mitzrayim or Egypt. So you can see how it's kind of like this place of trappings. It's a place of trappings, and descended from Ham. Okay, so we're leaving Egypt. Do you guys notice how in mainstream kind of, I don't know what you call it, music and media, there's a lot of Egyptian symbols, right? They use they use the Eye of Horus. They use all these Egyptian symbols. Okay, that's not a coincidence, right? We are leaving all of that. We're leaving all of that. So all that mainstream Egyptian type stronghold, right? It's an obvious why the mainstream music industry and stuff uses those symbols. They are a part of that camp, right? And so we want to leave that stronghold, that camp, even in our lives now, and we're exiting all of that, right? We don't worship at that place anymore, right? Okay, I think we're at verse 11.
When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in time to come your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first open the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be as a mark on your hand or frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt.
Okay. there's just so much to cover. I don't know, like we could be here for hours and hours and hours. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, and you shall not, you shall, if you will not redeem it, and you shall break its neck. An interesting study to do is the study of the donkeys in scripture. They're beasts of burden. And so why did Yeshua ride in on a donkey? It was his burden. So it's this picture of Yeshua's redemption. And so this is all a shadow picture of Yeshua's redemption. If you look up donkeys, they have a cross on their back. So donkeys actually have a cross on their back, which is quite an intricate, amazing thing. So when we're looking at these shadow pictures of Yeshua and Yeshua riding in the donkey, so the donkey in Hebrew is a beast of burden. And so you see these different donkeys in scripture. When Moshe was first coming into Egypt to do his work, to do the things that he had to do and confront Pharaoh, there was a donkey there, right? We see donkeys in the story of Balaam and Balak, right? The donkey speaks against what Balaam is going to do, right? And so these are it's like the donkey is a picture of what journey are you going on? What is your cross to bear, right? And so when Yeshua is riding on the donkey, it's this picture of he's coming to ride into Jerusalem because he has to bear this burden, and he's bearing this burden to redeem us. And that's the depth of this shadow picture being shown right here in this Exodus. We're seeing that there's this command to redeem. But every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. And it's this picture of his redemption, right? All right, we're going to go on to Jeremiah 46. I'm just going to take a quick break. Jeremiah 46:13.
The word that the Lord spoke to Jeremiah the prophet about the coming of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, to strike the land of Egypt. Declare in Egypt and proclaim in Migdol, proclaim in Memphis and Tahpanhes, say, stand ready and be prepared, for the sword shall devour around you. Why are your mighty ones face down? They do not stand because the Lord thrust them down. He made many stumble, and they fell. And they said one to another, arise and let us go back to our own people and to the land of our birth, because of the sword of the oppressor. Call the name of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, noisy one who lets the hour go by. As I live, declares the king, whose name is the Lord of hosts, like Tabor among the mountains, and like Carmel by the sea shall one come. Prepare yourselves baggage for exile, O inhabitants of Egypt, for Memphis shall become a waste, a ruin without inhabitant. A beautiful heifer is Egypt, but a biting fly from the north has come upon her. Even her hired soldiers in her midst are like fattened calves. Yes, they have turned and fled together. They did not stand, for the day of their calamity has come upon them, the time of their punishment. She makes a sound like a serpent gliding away, for her enemies march in force and come against her with axes like those who fell trees. They shall cut down her forest, declares the Lord, though it is impenetrable, because they are more numerous than locusts, they are without number. The daughter of Egypt shall be put to shame. She shall be delivered into the hand of a people from the north. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, said, behold, I am bringing punishment upon Ammon of Thebes, and Pharaoh and Egypt, and her gods and her kings, upon Pharaoh and those who trust in him. I will deliver them into the hand of those who seek their life, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and his officers. Afterward, Egypt shall be inhabited as in the days of old, declares the Lord. But fear not, O Jacob, my servant, nor be dismayed, O Israel. For behold, I will save you from far away, and your offspring from the land of their captivity. Jacob shall return and have quiet and ease, and none shall make him afraid. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, declares the Lord, for I am with you. I will make a full end of all the nations to which I have driven you, but of you I will not make a full end. I will discipline you in just measure, and I will by no means leave you unpunished.
Okay, so Jeremiah was a prophet to the nations often, and he would send out these words to the nations. I was thinking about this today. So now we have the internet, and we have all these people on the internet. I heard a word from the Lord. I heard a word from the Lord, which is very scary to say. I would be careful of ever saying that. Thus saith Jehovah. You want to be careful to say anything like that. You could say, I had a dream, or the Spirit moved me in this direction. I had a revelation, but I would be careful about saying, thus says Jehovah. You see these prophets on the internet all the time, and they're like, thus, it's like, that's scary, dude. That's really scary. You don't even fear. Reverence of Jehovah is the beginning of understanding. You got to have that reverence. Anyways, so Jeremiah's prophet to the nations. I always think about how, like, in order to send out a word, so say he has a prophecy for Egypt that needs to go out, he would send out a messenger to deliver that message, right? And so that messenger would get on a camel or whatever and take a caravan to Egypt to deliver the message. Very interesting to think about that. So we have here the picture of the king of Babylon is going to come upon Egypt, right? The siege of Egypt. And so we can look at this as a very deep metaphorical picture of the end times, as the king of Babylon is going to come and he's going to strike Egypt. Notice that he's striking Egypt. He's not striking the Israelites. Jacob, the Israelites, and those grafted into the Israelites are going to be tribulated. They're going to have some correction, but they're not going to go through the utter destruction. And I find this super interesting because you have a lot of Christian prophets right now who are prophesying utter destruction upon the people of America. And I find that very interesting because, and they're prophesying war and they're prophesying all this stuff, which I do think is coming. But those who are Jehovah's, who are grafted in, it says here, fear not, O Jacob, my servants, right? My servant, or be dismayed, O Israel, for behold, I will save you from far away. And you see the same picture in Isaiah 52 to 56, where the people are kept and protected. And we see this in the book of Exodus, that his people are kept and protected from the last of the plagues. They go through the tribulation at the beginning of the plagues, but then later on, they're kept from the plagues and they exit. While the plagues are happening and the kingdom of Egypt is being destroyed and judgment is coming upon it, the people of Israel are kept, right? And those grafted in the mixed multitude that goes with them are also kept and protected. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. So there's this picture of, the two groups that are fighting and battling in this picture are Egypt and Babylon. And we've gone through, in all of December, we go through the symbols of Assyria, which is Babylon, right? And we've gone through that, and we've gone through all the symbols, and then Egypt is Ham, right? So it's Ham and Babylon that are battling. It's not Jacob battling. Jacob is being kept during this time and being set aside, just like in Goshen, the Israelites were being kept and set aside. I think that's an important shadow picture to remember in the times to come, because maidens with lamps are going to be ready to understand all of this. But maidens who have been putting up Christmas trees are not going to understand what's going on here. And they're going to think that they need to go to war with Egypt and Babylon, when Egypt and Babylon are supposed to be just destroying each other. And you should just let them destroy each other. So why are you going to war with Egypt and Babylon? Just let them have it out. You're going to be up on Mount Zion hanging with Jehovah, right? Isaiah 56. Okay, interesting verse. She, so Babylon, makes a sound like a serpent gliding away, but her enemies march in force and come up against her with axes, like those who fell trees. They shall cut down her forest, declares Jehovah, though it be impenetrable. Okay, so the symbol of the tree of Lebanon, the cedar of Lebanon, that kind of gets threaded throughout Scripture, is because there's no trees in Egypt. So what trees are they cutting down, right? It's a symbol of great powers that have grown up and sprouted up. That is the symbol of the evergreen tree throughout Scripture. Okay, so you have in Daniel 4, you can look that up, the symbol of the evergreen tree. You have it in Isaiah something or other. I forget where it is now. I want to give you that reference so you have it. I've talked about this multiple times. There's Isaiah 10:34. Isaiah 44. You can look that one up. The main one I just did a video on a couple weeks ago. Isaiah 14. So Isaiah 14 also has it. So the picture of the evergreen tree is this picture of political strengths, people who are strong, people who are ruling over others, okay? And it's this picture of the mighty cedars, right, are ruling over everyone. Everyone's resting in their branches. It's political leadership, it's kingship, it's all of these people that are kind of lifted up like a tree, okay? And then the picture that Jehovah gives us is chopping down these trees, okay? And so this is why we speak against the Christmas tree, because the Christmas tree is the symbol that has been artificially re-erected and then decorated with false fruit, right? It's very ritualistic, symbolic. And if you don't know the scriptures, if you do know the scriptures, you can see it quite plainly. But if you don't know the scriptures and you never explore the scriptures, you won't see it. You'll just be like, oh, these people are ridiculous with their Christmas tree fear. It's not being afraid. It's just, I'm not going to do a ritual which erects something that Jehovah has cut down, right? And put false fruit on it. That's a terrible idea. It's like, if you know witchcraft, you could spot it a mile away, right? So the symbol of the cedars is a symbol of the strength and power of these different elements raising up. So even in Isaiah later, we see that the cedars of Lebanon are used to decorate. This is a picture of the people actually repenting, right? The people who have repented, the nations who have repented, now they're coming to Jerusalem and they can grow up strong because they've repented. And Jehovah can grow them naturally. They'll still have roots and they'll be growing naturally. They're not, it's not the picture of them falsely being re-erected, okay? We grow from the wisdom of Jehovah, and he produces the fruit that goes on us, okay? If we're rooted in his word and we grow up like trees, right, then he grows the fruit. He cuts off the branches he doesn't want, he trims the branches, and we grow the fruit. He grows the fruit from us, okay? I saw this really cool thing today, and it was like, don't be concerned. Actually, I have it. I'll show you guys. I think I screenshotted it. Effects. Did I screenshot it? Oh, it might be too small to screenshot. Okay. It was just basically the gist of it was the fruit is the last thing that grows. So if you're going through your journey and you're walking through your walk with Jehovah and you're still struggling and you're still feeling like you're being refined and branches are being cut off of you metaphorically, and he's trimming you back and he's refining you constantly, but you don't seem to have that fruit showing up in your life, the fruit of blessing, the fruit of whatever. Fruit is the last thing to grow, right? The tree is strengthened, the roots are strengthened, the branches are strengthened. The fruit appears last. So don't let yourself be weary that you don't have that fruit showing up quite like you thought it would yet. The fruit of blessing or the fruit of patience or the fruits of the Spirit, if they're not showing up quite like you would want them to show up, just remember that he's got to work on your branches first, and he's got to trim your branches, and he's got to trim you back first before fruit can grow. Okay, so don't get caught up in that. So in this book of Jeremiah is talking about how Babylon is going to come with axes and cut down those who have grown up in Egypt, who have grown up strong. So I want to think about this in like kind of an end times perspective. Just, this is just my thoughts. Don't like, I'm not saying that this is true or 100% or whatever. These are just my thoughts today. So if you have Babylon, those who erect Christmas trees, and that kingdom, right? And then you have, because Babylon is Assyria, okay? So that's where that comes from, okay? And Babylon is the one that tends to have these different idol problems. And then you've got the idols of Egypt and those who are the descendants of Ham and all their idolatry. And these two are going to battle against each other. Now, Babylon is going to cut down the idolatry cut down the strongholds and the powers of Egypt. So it's actually Babylon and Egypt going against each other and destroying each other, which is super interesting. So he's using Babylon to bring judgment upon the strongholds of Egypt. I just find that fascinating. So that we're being told not to not fear, okay? And I want to point out too, like this Torah portion is about the Passover and the people who have joined themselves to the mixed multitude, those who have come out of Egypt. So that's what this Torah portion is about, the Passover. And then we're going through this judgment, right? The judgment is coming upon those who are not crossing over, who are not marking themselves correctly, right? And so, the mixed multitude and the Israelites are marking themselves and they're getting ready to leave Egypt fully, right? And so they're being told not to fear, okay? And now we're going to go to the Gospels where we're going to talk about our Passover lamb, Yeshua. And it's a very short section that they gave us here today, but I think almost we should go and read it, like read more of it, because they only gave us a little paragraph to do today. Let's go to John 19. Let's go to John 19 and I'll just read out. Yeah, let's just read all of John. I don't want to excerpt anything. Then Pilate took Yeshua and flogged him, and the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on the head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came to him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and struck him with their hands. Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you that you may know that I found no guilt in him." So Yeshua came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." And when the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, "Crucify him, crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." And the Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to the law he ought to die because he has made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He entered his headquarters again and said to Yeshua, "Where are you from?" But Yeshua gave him no answers. So Pilate said to him, You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have the authority to release you and the authority to crucify you? And Yeshua answered him, You have no authority over me at all unless it has been given to you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin. From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." So when Pilate heard these words, he brought Yeshua out and sat him down on the judgment seat in a place called the Stone Pavement, in Aramaic, Gabbatha. And now it was the day of preparation. I never noticed that before. The judgment seat called the Stone Pavement, and in Aramaic, Gabbatha. Gabbatha? Place of the name?
Gabbatha.
Sorry, side quest here, guys. Side quest. Chaldean origin, a knoll. Gabbatha, a vernacular term called the Stone Pavement. Now it was the day of the preparation of the Passover. So this is the preparation day for the Passover. It was in the 6th hour that he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." And they cried out, "Stay away from him, crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" And the chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." And so they delivered him over to be crucified. So Passover starts at twilight. So Yeshua is going through this process on the day of preparation for the Passover. So now a Jewish day starts at sunset. So it's sunset of the Passover. That will begin the Passover that twilight at that day, and then the Passover will be the next full day. Okay, so at the sunset, the Passover will begin. And so this is the daytime leading up to that twilight period. Okay. They cried out, away with him, crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." That's interesting. So he delivered him over to be crucified. So I don't know if you guys remember, if you go back, I don't know if we've gone over this, but there's this point in time where the Israelites called out for a king, and they called out for a king, and he said, "I want to be the king over you." Yehovah wanted to be their king. But they cried out for a man to be their king. And so thus, Yehovah gave them Saul, right? And so Saul became their king. Because they would not make Yehovah their king, who ruled over them, Saul then became their king, okay? And that didn't go so well. And so they took Yeshua, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of the skull, in Aramaic called Golgotha. I think these two things are important. Like you have the Golgotha, and then you have the Gabbatha. It's just really interesting. I never noticed those two places. I knew Golgotha before, and I noticed that, but I didn't notice the Gabbatha. And they're just two they're stones, which I think is interesting. There might be something really interesting there. Therefore, they crucified him, and with 2 others on either side, with Yeshua between them. Pilate also wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. It read, "Yeshua of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place of where Yeshua was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, in Latin, and in Greek. So the chief of the priests said to Pilate, "Do not write, 'The King of the Jews,' but rather, 'This man said, I am King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "I have written what I have written." When the soldiers had crucified Yeshua, they took his garments and dividing them into 4 parts, 1 part for each soldier, also his tunic. But the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top to the bottom. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots to see who it shall be." And this fulfilled the scripture which says, "They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots." I think that's in Psalms. So the soldiers did these things by standing by the cross of Yeshua were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. And when Yeshua saw his mother and disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." And then he said to his disciple, "Behold your mother." And from this hour, the disciple took her into his own home. Okay, so the Catholics have taken this little section and ran with it. And this is why they look at they look at Peter and they say they deify Mary so much, and they do all this stuff. A lot of it comes from this little section. But what is going on here is that Yeshua, being the son, dying, he wanted to make sure his mother was taken care of. And I'm thinking that maybe Joseph must have been passed at this point, because it's very important in those days that the woman had someone to take care of her. That's why you see the Yibum laws. You see all these different things, structures put in place, that the women are always covered and taken care of, because it was very precarious and very dangerous for a woman not to have a man taking care of her in that time. And so this is what I think is going on here, is that Yeshua is making sure that his mom will be taken care of. Like, you treat her like your own mother, okay? And so from that hour, the disciple then takes her into his own home. So I'm thinking that probably something was going on where she needed care, right? Like, she needed protection. John 19:28. And after this, Yeshua, knowing that all was now finished, and to fulfill the scripture, said, "I thirst." A jar full of sour wine stood there, and a sponge full of the sour wine on a hyssop branch held it to his mouth. When Yeshua had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. I just want to go back to the Torah portion really quick and show you guys. Where is it? I know I saw this. Looking for the part where Moses takes the hyssop. I know I saw it when we were reading it earlier. Okay, here it goes. So we're at, if you go back to Exodus 12, verse 21. Then Moshe called all the elders of Israel and said to them, "Go select lambs for yourselves according to your clans and kill the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood in the basin and touch the lintel of the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin." So there's the hyssop here as well. And then when we go into the actual commandments, you'll see the hyssop show up again. And so it's really interesting that we have the hyssop again with the crucifixion. I just want to look up hyssop in Hebrew. It's ezob. I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation. A little plant, a cedar branch. Again, connecting like a branch, right? Really interesting. I have nothing to say. I just thought it was really interesting. I always like to just look up the little things that seem to be repeated, the symbols that seem to be repeating. Back to John 19. He bowed his head and gave up his spirit. He said, "It is finished." When he had received the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. I was also thinking, and this is just me talking, I have nothing profound to say about it, but you know how during the Passover, when they ate the Passover and they had the communion meal before, he said, "I will not drink of this cup again until I drink of it um, with you in the new kingdom." And then now he's being given sour wine. I feel like there's a deeper picture there that I don't quite understand. If somebody else understands it, please feel free to type it in the comments. John 19:31. Since it was the day of the preparation, so that the bodies would not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, for the Sabbath was a high day, the Jews asked Pilate that the legs might be broken and that it might be taken away. That they might be taken away. So the Jews are requesting that the Romans go and break the legs of the people on the crosses, and so that they could come down. If they hadn't died yet, by breaking the legs, that would cause asphyxiation, and then that would kill them. So that's why, because you'd have to push yourself up to take a breath during crucifixion, and so as long as their legs were intact, they could push themselves up to take a breath. So what the Jews are asking for is to break the legs. Therefore, the people will asphyxiate and die because they won't be able to push themselves up anymore. Now, remember in the Torah portion earlier, we talked about how the Passover lamb was not to have any broken bones. When you have the Passover lamb, no bones are to be broken, right? So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first, and they broke the other who had been crucified with him. But when they came to Yeshua and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But then one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once out came blood and water. And he who saw it has borne witness that this testimony is true, and he who knows it, and he knows that he is telling truth, that you may also believe. For these things that took place in Scripture must be fulfilled. Not one of his bones will be broken. And the other Scripture that says, they will look upon him whom they have pierced. I think that's Isaiah 53, where that one is. And after these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Yeshua, but secretly, for fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Yeshua. And Pilate gave him permission. And so he came and took away his body. Nicodemus also, who had earlier come to Yeshua by night, bringing him a mixture of myrrh and aloes, and about 75 pounds in weight. And so they took the body of Yeshua, bound it in linen cloths with spices, as is the burial custom of the Jews. Now, in that place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a tomb which no one had been laid. So because of the Jewish day of preparation, since the womb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there. This is where it kind of gets important to understand why Christians are so confused about the Passover timeline. And the reason that Christians get really confused about the Passover timeline is because they don't know the feasts. And because they've never been taught the feasts, they do this Good Friday thing, which is actually incredibly incorrect. And so you see in this section, there's all this talk about Sabbaths. Well, the feast days, the day of Passover is a high Sabbath. So when earlier in John it says, for this is a high Sabbath, that tells you specifically that they're talking about the high Sabbath of Passover. They're not talking about the weekly Sabbath. And so when you have the Catholic Church and the Protestant daughters of the Catholic Church keeping Good Friday as a day, this is one of those things where it's very obviously wrong. Anyone who knows the feasts know that this is extremely wrong. Let me just walk you through it so that you understand. Understand the timing of everything, okay? Just looking up a graphic that is really good for this. Here it is. Why is this not clear? Sorry, I'm just trying to find the correct graphic, but it wasn't showing up clearly. Okay, here's a clear one of it. And you can search this up yourself. I Googled Passover week, or sorry, Passover Jesus week 119, and I got this. That's what it took for me to find this. And there's a lot of different ones, but this one is a really good one, from 119 Ministries. And I'll just show you, and we could just walk through, and then that way you'll know, this, and this has to do with the Daniel 7:25 thing too. The beast church seeks to change the times and the laws, right? So here we go with the Hebrew calendar. Okay, so Tuesday, right, of that week, this is the week that Yeshua died, okay? They has the Last Supper, okay? So they have their Last Supper. The next day, that's the day where I just talked about, where Yeshua was taken before Pontius Pilate, okay? So his trial is all this day, right? All of this day is his trial. Okay, at twilight, that's when the Passover lambs are supposed to be sacrificed, is at twilight before the Passover day. This Passover day is a high Sabbath, okay? Notice that it landed on a Thursday, not a Friday. This is a false Catholic doctrine that they're doing here, okay? So this high Sabbath would be the first day of unleavened bread, and it follows the day of preparation. So where Christians get confused is most regular Christians don't understand that feast days are also Sabbath days, right? Because you don't have the weekly Sabbath until here, okay? This is where we have the weekly Sabbath. So this high Sabbath was a day, so they wanted him off the cross. They wanted him down at twilight. Why? Because they didn't want him hanging on the cross on a high Sabbath, defiling the land, okay? That's why Yeshua's body was placed in the tomb right there. Now, what is the prophecy that Yeshua said? Sign of Jonah, 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the beast. Sign of Jonah. Now, if you ignore what the scriptures say and you go with what the Catholics say, the leaven of Herod, you've got 1 day, or sorry, they would say that, well, they would have to say that he died here, right? I'm talking about the leaven of Herod, the Catholic doctrine. So they're saying that Yeshua died here at this twilight. Well, then you've got one day, you've got barely 2 days, and you got him rising again on Sunday. So you can see that this is the wrong Messiah, literally the wrong Messiah. People are looking at the wrong Messiah. Idolatry, a carved image made by man. Idolatry is a carved image made by man. So if you have Rome carving out this image, that is a wrong image, that isn't a scriptural image. Idolatry. This is idolatry, okay? Because it's a carved image made by man that you are worshiping. A carved Jesus that isn't the Jesus of the scriptures, okay? So now we go back to, we have the high Sabbath. That's why they wanted him off the cross, okay? Then you have 3 days and 3 nights. 1, 2, 3. Then he arises. So the other thing to notice, when does Yeshua rise? He rose at the twilight after the Sabbath day, not Sunday morning. Twilight, Sabbath day, exactly 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb, okay? So, but in the morning, the woman bought the spices and they noticed he was already risen, but he arises on the cusp of the Sabbath moving to Sunday, okay? And so this doctrine of we worship Yeshua on Sunday because he rose on, well, you should start Saturday night then. If that's your theology, you should be starting Saturday night, which is fine. I think that's fine. I think you should absolutely gather and worship just like they did in the scriptures, but you can't change the Sabbath day. You don't have that authority, and Rome doesn't have that authority. Okay. And so then you have the 3 days and 3 nights, and you've got the women. So, and this is also how you know. Okay, so this Sabbath was done. The women didn't go out and get the herbs and the anointing stuff. They didn't do it this day. Why not? Because it's a high Sabbath. They're not going to be buying and selling. They did it this day. This day was a day that this is a preparation for the regular Sabbath. They could go out, they could buy, they could sell. So they went out and they purchased their preparation and anointing spices after the high Sabbath, okay, before the weekly Sabbath. Here's all the verses you can look up, screenshot this if you want. So you can go look up all these verses and test this out for yourself, okay? All right, so now they rested on the weekly Sabbath according to the commandment. In this time, Yeshua is in the grave, right? And Yeshua rises on the 7th day. Then that morning, they bring the spices, and they did not want to be touched because he had not ascended to the Father to present himself as a first fruits wave sheaf offering. Now, the first fruits wave sheaf offering is something we'll get into in the coming weeks. So he had rose from the dead, but he hadn't yet ascended to the Father as the first fruits wave offering. So that's when he'll ascend, and then he will be able to be touched. So he didn't want to be touched until he had actually ascended. But then you notice when he comes back and he reveals himself to the disciples, then they're allowed to touch him, right? Because Thomas got to touch him, right? So this is, you can look this up, testeverything.net. You can look this up. And so this Friday, Good Friday to Sunday, that's the idolatry. That's the carved image of Rome. The scriptural image is Passover, High Sabbath, first fruits. That's the scriptural image that Yehovah designed for us to understand, okay? Idolatry, scripture, okay? Carved images. Carved images are not just statues. Carved images are not just statues. He gave us, we just read through all the Exodus, he gave us these images of his feasts to understand his full plan of salvation, and also so that we understand that we have the right Yeshua. We have the correct Yeshua. Because Yeshua said many are going to come in his name and say that they are the Christ, right? The only way you know if you have the correct one is if your image of Christ lines up with scripture, right? Many are going to come in his name and say they are the Christ, right? All right. I think that was it, right? Let me just check. No, we still have more to read. Okay. So since it was because the Jewish so no one had yet been laid, since it was the Jewish day of preparation, since the tomb was close at hand, they laid Yeshua in there. John 20, verse 1. And now it is on the first day of the week. First day of the week. What day is that? Sunday morning. Okay. So now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark. So she came in the morning while it was still dark on the first day of the week. Okay. And saw that the stone had been taken away. So the stone had already been removed because Yeshua rose at the twilight of the Sabbath, right? And so she ran to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Yeshua loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." So Peter went out to the other disciple, and they were going to the tomb. Both of them were running together, but one disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. But the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. That always cracks me up. And stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths laying there, but he did not go in. And then Simon Peter came in following him, and he went to the tomb. And he saw the linen cloths laying there, and the face of the cloth which had been on Yeshua's head, lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. And the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. And as of yet, they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. And then the disciples went back to their homes. Okay, so the disciples came, they saw the empty tomb, they went back to their homes, okay? And this is the part where Mary sees him. But then Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and she wept. She stooped and looked into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Yeshua was laying, one at the head and one at the feet. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" And she said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Having said this, she turned around and saw Yeshua standing, but she did not know it was Yeshua. Yeshua said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, that I may take him away." And Yeshua said to her, "Mary." And she turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Yeshua said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father, your Father, to my God and your God." So he goes up to ascend. He becomes the first fruit wave offering, right? Mary Magdalene went out and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and he had said these things to her. On that evening of the day, the first of the week, the doors being locked where the disciples were, for they were in fear of the Jews, Yeshua came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." And he had said this, and he showed them his hands and his side. And then the disciples were glad that they saw the Lord. And Yeshua said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you." And then he said this, and he breathed on them, and he said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. And if you withhold forgiveness from any, it is withheld." Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, and was not with them when Yeshua came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." And they said to him, "Unless I see his hands and the mark on his nails, and place my finger in the mark of his nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas said to them, although the doors were locked, Yeshua came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see your hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." And Thomas answered him, "My Lord, my God." And Yeshua said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed." And Yeshua did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So just really interesting, the connection there between the first fruits feast and then how he could not be touched, and then Thomas touches him. A lot of this stuff, it's important to remember that you're seeking the true image, but don't argue and debate you know, over it too much, because it does become fruitless. People debating, kind of these smaller issues becomes really fruitless. So we want to look at understanding and being able to explain to brother Judah, by using the scriptures, who Yeshua is. So what did the Bereans do when they met with Paul? They went through the scriptures, and they were able to go through the scriptures and present to Paul was able to present to them, all these details, so that they would know. They opened up the scriptures so that they would know that Yeshua is the Messiah. All of these details are in there so that you can recognize who your Messiah is, right? And that's really, really important. Thank you for coming today. If you have any questions, go ahead. I'm just going to stop my recording here.